Welcome to Conscious and Aligned Conversation with two favorites of mine, and I really was excited to get them since we're doing pretty much everything virtually these days. I was excited to get them in the same virtual space. And the first person that I'm going to introduce briefly is Stefanie Dougherty. She is a dear friend of mine. We met when we lived in Vegas, and we actually really connected when we had both left Vegas. We were both in cold ass parts of the country. Maybe it was over the cold. And so we connected, and then Taylor and I have known each other for 3 years now. And we really connected when we were actually in Uganda. So we left the US and got really close when we were both traveling to Uganda as part of our advocacy work. So I'm going to turn and thank you all for watching this. We had plans. We oftentimes have plans, and then the divine laughs. And so tech was not our friend today. It was actually thankfully not user error. So we wanted to do this live with y'all so that we can hear your questions and hear some of the things that you all are doing at home. And it just wasn't in the cards today. So I'm going to turn my proverbial mic over to Stefanie to introduce yourself briefly in your own words.
Okay, thank you so much for having me here, Chi. You know how much I love you. I'm really honored to be sharing the panel discussion here with you and Taylor. My name is Stefanie Dougherty. I'm a plant-based lifestyle coach, and I founded my little company called Green Sage, through which I help people get healthier, basically, by shifting their diet over to a more plant-centered, whole food, plant-based way of eating and living. And I do that by teaching online courses and sharing my healthy recipes on my blog and in a recipe newsletter. And actually right now I'm working on an ebook to help people with healthy quarantine cooking. So that's going to be coming out pretty soon.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. And on the side, sort of as that's my passion work. That's what I do full time. But I also work as a beauty counter consultant alongside Chi. And that's a really socially upstanding company based in California. And as consultants, we really focus on educating people on the need for safer personal care products, because there's abysmally almost no legislation in that industry, and these are toxic chemicals that people are putting on their skin every day. And sadly, the hardest hit communities are the ones that are so often marginalized. So it's a really important issue that it does affect the whole spectrum of the population, but disproportionately so on the marginalized end. So I'm really proud and honored to do that work and to provide a solution, one of many, to get people using safer products. And of course, I also work alongside Chi as a sort of new SACO fellow, and that's another super noble cause that I'm really excited and proud to support in my more or less spare time. Although there's so much overlap in these fields in terms of wellness and conscious living that they all kind of seg really nicely.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the disparities and who is affected disproportionately. And what that means, y'all, because we are here to educate in this space intentionally, is that it's like the folks that get it are, Dan Jones said it great, and I'm going to find his quote, so it might not be right now, but when we talk about disproportionate effect, it means that someone who perhaps doesn't make up they might experience it. Someone who's marginalized experiences something more often than someone who is not marginalized. And when we look at the percentage of experiencing a thing, whether it's hospitalization from COVID-19 or homelessness, for example, when we look at the population of the person experiencing that, we see them experiencing it more often or more frequently than someone else. And when we look at how they're represented in the population, it is not equal. So it's disproportionate, meaning it's happening more often for certain people than others. So, Stefanie, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And
Thank you.
I am looking forward to this ebook because I love how Stefanie does like plant-centered living. It's no judgment. It's always welcoming and open. And it's all about like, just give it a whirl. You never know if you're going to like something if you don't try it out. So, okay, moving on. My next guest, Taylor, would you mind introducing yourself in your own words?
Sure. Hey, y'all. I am so excited to be here today. Stefanie, side note, I didn't know you became a SACO fellow. That's so exciting.
I'm
Welcome
excited.
to
Thank you.
that community. It's so amazing. So my name is Taylor. I work full-time as an attorney for the Massachusetts legislature. And my work is kind of different than what you consider, what you think about when you think about a lawyer. I don't practice in a courtroom, but I actually work on writing laws and helping to pass legislation. So interesting, Stefanie, to hear you talk about how there's not a lot of legislation around like clean beauty and beauty standards in this country. I know firsthand how hard it is to get anything passed, even when you have like a overwhelming consensus. It's just really difficult, and a lot of different factors come into play when it comes time to actually have a bill become a law. So I've learned a lot about successful advocacy through my own work, having advocates approach me and seeing what is a successful tactic and not being on the receiving end of advocacy. I feel like I have some good pointers for how to be a successful advocate for the things that people care about. And I particularly work in housing law. So I work for the housing committee for the legislature. So I'm writing laws that pertain to affordable housing production and preservation, and then homelessness prevention programs. That is the main focus of what I do every day.
And then what she didn't tell you, because she is very, very humble. So she is also a SACO fellow, and she started about 2 weeks before I did 3 years ago. So she's been a fellow since then for the last 3 years. She has also gone to Uganda, meaning she's earned a trip to go to Uganda 3 times. And last month, she did something that's, I don't think, ever been done in SACO history. She got a double promotion within a week of one another. So 2 promotions in 1 month. She got it on a Thursday. She hit executive mentor, which is huge. I think maybe there's less than 10 in the company out of 600 fellows. She hit executive mentor. And then a week later, on the last day of the month, she hit director, and we've only had 4 directors. So all 3 of us are in direct sales, social selling. We like to come alongside folks and provide, it kind of sounds smarmy almost to say solutions, and that's what it is. We like, if you're shopping, I want you to feel empowered to make the right choices for you and your family, whether it's healthcare, or whether it's skincare, or whether it's fair trade fashion or ethical fashion, ethical and elevated fashion. Each of us lives a life that's conscious and aligned and filled with passion and purpose, and you can hear that. The other thing I want to highlight about Taylor before we move on to kind of how Stefanie and Taylor and myself started to use our voices in ways that were meaningful. Taylor recently, when she said that she knows how challenging it is to write law, it's not bullshit, it's for real. And she actually, in the month that she hit executive mentor and director, which is super challenging to do, she also had a law that she wrote. Well, she had legislation that she wrote turn into law. So the governor of Massachusetts actually signed it. Well, I'm going to let her tell you. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, so like I said, it usually the average lifespan of when a bill becomes a law, to give you an idea, just in Massachusetts, we have about 7,000 bills that are filed every 2 years, and approximately, I would say, less than 200 of them actually become law. So a lot of them just don't get off the ground. So We are dealing with some unique challenges in the era of COVID. Not only are we trying to pass laws, but we're doing it when we can't be together. Like the legislature can't be on the House floor voting and debating and talking about language the way that we normally operate. So it was really, really impressive and powerful to see the way that we were able to kind of negotiate, not only from a language perspective, but negotiate all these unique challenges of trying to legislate in the era of social distancing, to get a law passed that would prevent people from being evicted or foreclosed on while we're in a state of emergency, which is, again, something that you would think, like, when this first came across my desk, I was saying to myself, there's no way that someone is going to evict a person during a state of emergency when we're being asked to stay at home to stay safe for all of us. That's not just for your own personal protection, that is for collective public health. And in the weeks that it took by the time we filed the bill to the time it was passed, which was really like a fast track, it was really, nothing ever happens that fast in government. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of notices to quit were filed to ask tenants to leave their apartments or homes. And that's with courts even being closed. So a landlord actually took the time to file that paperwork and submit it to a court that's only doing emergency hearings because it's closed, because they felt that strongly that they wanted their tenant to be out, usually through non-payment of rent and through no fault of the tenant. So it's just very eye-opening to see the ways in which you have to challenge humanity to really care about the whole and not just the individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a bill getting passed to law. So that makes me think about what you shared, Stefanie, and about some of the laws. So tell us about Beauty Counter and what makes it different in terms of its advocacy work with consultants, because it's a really powerful photo of a lot of women walking in Washington, D.C. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, this is occurring. Beauty Counter has an entire branch of their company dedicated to legislative advocacy, which is almost unheard of in the corporate world. So it's really a wonderful thing. And they do each year, either they bring a group, a representative of all 50 states to Washington, D.C. to talk with Congress in person about the need for more consumer protective regulation in the industry. And then on the off years, they invite consultants to meet with their local Congress people and explain the same message. So I just moved back to Las Vegas almost 2 years ago, but when I was still in Pennsylvania, I did go to Philadelphia and meet with representatives there, and it was really interesting because being kind of steeped in the wellness and health sphere, sometimes you forget that almost nobody knows that they can't really trust their personal care products, and that the labeling is deliberately misleading so often. So when we got the chance to talk to somebody who was not as familiar with the issue, it was really eye-opening to see how little they knew about it, but how open they were to, and receptive to the general principle that basically consumers have this implicit trust that if something's on the shelf and it's widely available, then it's necessarily safe. And it's just not the case in this industry at all. And I think we really tried to encourage the representatives to make good on that implicit trust and actually step up with the regulations so that people can really trust, so that we don't have to worry whether the label is being truthful or whether they just stuck a green leaf on it and made a cute brown craft paper label and it's still full of toxic ingredients. So yeah, it's really nice to be part of a company that's doing this work actively every single day. Mm-hmm. And then also to have the opportunity on an individual level as a consultant to participate in these activities. Mm-hmm. The company on the whole has been really successful in passing some legislation. For example, they were involved heavily in getting there was protective legislation for salon workers in California that came out, for example, in the last year. That was really it brought a lot of hope to our efforts here. They were involved in banning poisonous sunscreens in Hawaii, and now you have to have reef-safe sunscreens in Hawaii. So
Awesome.
here and there around the country, we're starting to see, as particularly in the more progressive states, that local legislation is going to lead the way here. So being active both at the local and at the national level has been an effective approach to start. But honestly, it is, like Taylor said, a slow moving and difficult process, because there are so many corporate interests that are fighting tooth and nail to protect their implicit right to basically, forgive the strong language, but to poison us, because those ingredients are cheaper than the ones that they use in Europe, where the consumer protective regulations are much more stringent. So basically, an international company that sells products in the two markets, Europe and the US, will formulate a completely different product here just because they're allowed to and because it impacts their bottom line. Meanwhile, they're selling a safer version of the product in Europe because they have to.
See. Stefanie, in Massachusetts, they have a bill that's trying to stop testing on animals for makeup and wellness products, and they brought in a beagle. I guess beagles are typically used because they are very docile dogs. They brought in a beagle that had been rescued from a lab and like walked him around the state house. And I have to tell you, like, that was probably one of the most effective advocacy days that we had, because people were just like so excited to learn about this beagle and Louis and why he was here and what he was doing and like the whole everything behind their advocacy campaign. So I love when they can get like really creative in terms of making people realize the bigger issue at play.
So true, because we're not trying to convince people to live by our select morals. We're trying to get them to live by their own. It's just that they're turning a blind eye on purpose to what's happening, unfortunately.
Totally.
So it's more of a call out than it is really an education, but both aspects are necessary.
Absolutely.
Well, and here's the thing too. It's like, we live in a country that was built on slavery, which led to capitalism. And so even in this COVID-19 landscape, right, where many of us are relegated to our homes. And so that's a privilege, right? And to Taylor's earlier point, if we're all in 3 different states, we are all under executive order to shelter in place. Well, you need an effing shelter, okay? So you need to have a roof over your head in order to comply, right? And some of us don't have to leave our homes to work, which is a gift and a privilege, right? And so when we think about, we have people who are keen to, I'm not talking about the people who want to start working again because they've gotten one of those notice to quits, right? They've gotten, in maybe a state that's not Massachusetts because they don't have badass Taylor working in their state. So I get it. I do understand. I mean, one of my friends, I won't say what state this friend is, said that when they attempted to apply for like a cashier's job at Trader Joe's, and they said that Trader Joe's mentioned that they had like 1,200 applicants for one cashier's job, right? That's the state in which we are. And so folks are really struggling, and I get that. I do feel for people. And I also know that there are plenty of people in the top 1% that don't look like us, right? And they are getting wealthy during this, and they are capitalizing on a global pandemic, which is really immoral. And yes, just because we have a right to do something doesn't mean we ought to take part in it, right? And so we have built a society around the love of money at the exclusion of being like participating as members of humanity. And so Tay and I have texted, and I'm like, you're amazing for this law. And we both lamented at the same time. It's like, I'm glad this happened. And also it's so jacked that it needed to, like, a bill had to be brought to the floor and be passed into law for folks to do the right thing, right? Like for people to not lose their homes, which is where they're supposed to be sheltering in place, So how did you all, I know for me, I started to become more of an advocate and use my voice around the 2016 circus of an election cycle. And I started using my Facebook platform to post about stuff. Definitely after the administration change, I used to start with wait and see, they said. And then I would say, well, here we are, because I mean, those first days, y'all, were tough. It was like every day, like hours would separate one news story from another of like, oh, the very thing that someone is supposed to be protecting, right? Like education. Put in an education secretary that doesn't want to protect it, right? Or housing. It's like,
don't even get me started.
It was mind-blowing, y'all. So I just kind of fell into this because I could not be quiet anymore. And I was actually quite, is disappointed the right word? I was saddened that that it took this to get me going, to light a flame under my ass, And so how did you all like stop caring about what folks thought, or maybe you still do? How did you feel more comfortable using your voice and speaking out and up in terms of causes and passions that are important to you?
Oh gosh. Stefanie, you want to go first?
Too. I understand. This is a great question because I am naturally conflict averse. It's hard to put myself out there, and I just prefer harmony so much. And I mean, I don't want to say a shortcoming, but it's definitely an innate trait of mine to avoid the conflict. So, yeah, and anytime you're speaking your mind about something publicly, there are going to be people who disagree. But I think there are just certain things that once you learn the facts and it stirs something in you and you just feel like you can't stay quiet anymore. And I think I can't really put my finger on a particular moment. It was almost like it built up to a point where, okay, I'm going to start saying something publicly about this, and I'm going to do it in a way that leads with education. And it's kind of non-judgmental, but informative, and we lead with education. And anytime that you put yourself out there sincerely like that, and you really make a deliberate effort to extract any feeling of superiority over others, then I think people have, forgive the expression, but I think people have a really good, generally speaking, a really good bullshit meter. And if you're sincere and you are, like I said, putting yourself out there to be a help, and just at least starting with the people that want help, would you like to know more about this? And I'm happy to tell you, because this is the research that I've done, and now I'm happy to present it to you with sincerity and without judgment. I think generally speaking, people are really receptive to that. And just getting started really helps, because we tend to imagine things to be afraid of that don't even exist, that like put a red light up in our mind, but they're just imaginary. So instead of imagining red light thoughts, like people are going to think blah, 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 maybe if we imagine the green light thoughts instead, because they're both imaginary. So you might as well imagine things that are going to help you go for it. That ultimately, that's a really good way to get started. Getting started in and of itself is such a motivator. So I think, yeah, but I'll pass it over to Taylor. I'm sure you have so much more insight on this.
No, and I agree with you too. Like, I think, Chi, I didn't really even think about it until you were talking about 2016 almost being the tipping point. I am also very conflict averse. I like to be very even keel, very compromised. Like, how can we all come to some sort of common ground that we can stand on together and realize that we have similarities? And 2016 was really a wake-up call for me, because I realized there are a lot of people, there's no common ground between me and some people, and that's going to be okay. And I need to stop kind of tempering my own thoughts and my own voice to try to not offend those people, when instead I should be really focusing on honing my voice and being educated and really diving into why these issues matter to me and why they should matter to other people, and addressing that audience. Like, I've already lost the audience of people who voted for Donald Trump for president. Like, whatever's coming out of my mouth is probably not something that you're going to come on board with, and I have to be okay with that. But if I can speak my mind in a way that makes someone pause and think and reevaluate their life and what they're doing and the things that they should be advocating for, even if that person and I were very similar to begin with, like just putting a new idea in someone's head, that's an advocacy win as far as I'm concerned. And if someone blocks me because of it, or doesn't like it, or thinks less of me because of it, I have just learned to bless and release.
Totally. I love that. And it bears mentioning too that like I'm just gonna call this out because it's really important, and I know that I can hear well, first, it's my conversation. Secondly, because, you know, this is something that I've learned to do myself as an advocate, because I am also, I'm a peacemaker. On the Enneagram, I'm a 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to come alongside everyone so that we can have a conversation, right? Everyone's invited to the table. And recently I've had to bless and block, right? Because I'm not a jackass whisperer and I am tired, right? Like I just, I mean, mercy. What more can I can't tell people to start caring about other people. And if you don't care about folks' baseline, you ain't my people. Like, and I don't think it's going to be what I'm going to say that's going to turn the light on for you. I mean, you're going to really have to dig deep and get a divine download, because it ain't me, you know? And you both are white women, right? And I'm a Black woman. And so we each have inherent privileges because of the layerings of our identities. And then we have some oppressions as well. And one of the things that I have noticed that both of y'all do, and this isn't like a pat on the back, it's just do what they're doing. Like one thing is like all about education, right? And so the three of us are educators, whether we're acknowledged for that or not. And one thing, so Taylor has a VIP page that I love. And I think, Stefanie, you're part of that page as well. Maybe you're not. If not, I will add you, because it is such a great place for community and connection. And she does a lot of advocacy within this group. And so folks that are listening to this recording, if you think, well, I don't have a huge platform, you don't actually need a huge platform. The reason I have almost 5,000 friends is because I went to a high school that's large. I went to an undergrad that's even larger. You know, I've gone to graduate and professional school at that same large institution. And so I have come across in my decades of being on this planet a lot of different people, in addition to like the social, right? And the folks that are getting blessed and blocked, they are clearing out space for me as I'm connecting with other like-minded folks. And I know that some people think, oh, we shouldn't be we're being siloed. Well, I just can't anymore. I mean, we'll do it at the end. My intention with starting this was a moment of silence for Ahmaud Arbery. And, you know, there are some folks that don't see it the way that the three of us see it. And I don't want those people or their nasty, hateful energy that's actually harmful to myself, like my life and the lives of plenty that I care about. I have 3 brothers who are Black, and I have 2 nephews that are mixed race, and they are super cute right now. And I imagine they will continue to be, and yet society will look at them differently as they get older, right? Because historically, and the data supports this, I'm a social science researcher, that Black kids are thought of as older than they actually are. And compared to white kids, they are thought of as older than they actually are. And so we see language in the news that will call a 21-year-old white boy, well, he's a man, right? And they will call him a boy. And a 12-year-old Black boy, who's actually a boy, they will say that he appeared larger than life, or he appeared to be bigger. And, you know, then we have the narrative of folks being like white people being fearful of their lives, right? So how do you, because you all have mentioned about, you know, having like not caring about what people think, in a way. So I care about what very few people think about me, because it's really what anyone thinks about me, even those people, is really not my business, right? As long as I haven't done anything to harm someone, whether intentionally or unintentionally, like actually harm, not call you out, harm. And if you don't like me or like what I have to say, I really don't care. That said, you know, we're kind of navigating this as businesswomen also. And so how do you, I'm going a little off script, how do you continue to have your businesses and speak your mind?
That's a good question. I feel like, and I think that this goes back to being a successful advocate. I think sometimes people get so overwhelmed by all the things in the world that need to be fixed. They just say, I am not big enough as a one person to change any one of these things, so I'm not going to do anything about any of them. And I think when you can really hone in on your own passions and the things that you're really interested in, like I am very interested in making sure that the field of law is more diverse globally. I think the more voices that we have within the field of law that come from different backgrounds that are not their traditional privileged white male Ivy League education is going to be better for our entire justice system. So that's something that I believe in my core, and that's something that I work for both in my professional role, trying to mentor younger women who are coming through as lawyers, and also in my work as Seiko, connecting with lawyers and future lawyers in Uganda and hopefully one day in Ethiopia, and talking about why their work is so important. So when you are grounded in an idea that is so inherent to your being that it radiates through everything that you're doing, it really makes having an opinion just seem like a natural offset of who you are. And if that person, like, they come to expect those opinions from you. So if they know getting into a business relationship with you that this is the person you are up front, and this is what you believe, and this is how you carry out those beliefs in your personal life, in your professional life, and throughout your business, you're gonna attract the type of people that you want to work with, and you want to network with, and you want to be your customers. And I personally would rather have a smaller customer base that feels very connected to me and it believes in the same things. I mean, they don't have to believe in everything that I believe in, right, to be my friend or to be in business with me, but I'm not gonna shy away from who I am and the things I believe in just to make someone feel more comfortable about doing business with me. Because when you do business with me, you do business with my whole person.
That's right. I love that. What about you, Stefanie?
Yeah, I think Taylor really said it perfectly. This idea of integrity, and I'm trained as a linguist. I was a French translator for 18 or so years before I switched into the career I'm in now.
Cool.
The word integrity etymologically means wholeness, right? Integral. And so when you have a set of values, you carry them into everything you do. It permeates everything you do. So yes, I might not lead with my feelings about race relations if I'm talking about skincare necessarily. However, I'm definitely sensitive to those issues when I'm presenting these topics. And I think one of the keys is that it's not usually the most effective way to open people's minds to call them out publicly. So more often than not, I'm going to offer somebody who disagrees with me on some fundamental issue the opportunity to hear my point of view in a private forum.
Totally.
Then we eliminate all the embarrassment and the fronting and feeling like somebody else is going to see this. And I think whether it's a personal conflict or a fundamental disagreement on something much larger, I think that it always helps to be having these conversations. I shouldn't say always helps, but it's for me, it's been an effective approach to have these conversations privately.
Yeah. one-on-one advocacy is like extremely effective. Mm-hmm.
The only caveat to that I would offer is when, like, I have a friend who, well, she's Taylor and I's friend, and you would love her too, Stefanie. She's actually a beauty counter consultant as well. And she shared one of my posts about Ahmad today, and she said, don't go to Chidimma about this. She's already borne enough emotional labor on this. Come to me, you know? And for me, sometimes folks do come to me via DM or PM, and it's a lot more than I have the capacity or desire to give. The other thing is I have more recently, and it's only been one situation where someone was, I don't know if you all have heard the term sea lining. It's like gaslighting. It's a different kind of gaslighting. There's a great YouTube video. If within YouTube and you say, you put in the search bar sea lining, it's about 5 minutes. And it's this unique trolling gaslighting where someone will come into your comments and they will say, oh, Stefanie, I'd like an example of this. And you give them an example and they keep asking for more evidence to demonstrate that you actually don't know what you're talking about. And it's really harmful. And so this man, who I called a rabid racist dog, was like hounding around and like it was over the course of a couple days, because I had posted about 2 French doctors who are well respected, who wanted to test a potential COVID vaccination on the continent of Africa. And I was like, that is racist, period. That's a statement of fact. It's not my opinion. It's not conjecture, right? And he said, well, how would someone who's well respected actually be racist? And I was like, very easily. They're doing it, right? They have accomplished that. And he could not or would not, one of the two, right? Could not or would not get through this. And so he finally started to ask me for evidence, you know, and then the next day when I posted about that exchange without naming him, he dropped in the comments a second time and said, how could anyone support this? And I was like, bitch, that was you. Like, what are you talking about? Y'all.
The cognitive dissonance.
I'm sane. I was like, what? And then so I finally just screenshotted the entire exchange because I was like, no, I'm about to call this man out because this is just too much, you know? And I think that there's a time and place for different things. And sometimes for me, I have found the public call out has been helpful because I'm like, you want to be like this? We're going to put it all out there and we're going to talk about it. And because it is really harmful. Like what he did was very harmful to me. It was harmful to my physical health. It was harmful to my mental health. And, I think those of us that have some sort of privilege, depending on what it is, do have a responsibility to speak up in ways that those that don't enjoy those same privileges so that they can rest, if you will. And yeah, it can be really challenging for those of us so all 3 of us are also introverted. Like I would never, maybe Tay, are you an ambivert or are you introverted?
I'm ambivert.
Okay. So you're an ambivert. Stefanie is definitely introverted. Are you, right?
Oh, people think that because I'm quiet, but I do really love people so much. So I think I go both ways. Like,
okay, so you're an ambivert. Look at me getting it all wrong. I am certainly an introvert. People drain me a lot. And it doesn't mean though that and then people get confused, right? Like they think that introverted folks are quiet. I'm not quiet. Not even a little bit. That said, interacting with people, like I love the divine and I love humanity, and people get on my damn nerves. So like y'all have heard me say that. And it's because I do see the good, like I'm able to see the good, and I'm able to see where we have work to do, like where we have like the cracks in our foundation. And I love that you were talking about integrity, because when we're thinking about, say, like the structure of a home or a building, right? If we're pouring concrete, we have to make sure all the way through it's concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That means that that concrete isn't like has integrity, right? All the way through it's the same. Like it's not been our skincare, hell, like fillers, chemicals, much, you know, like it's not, it doesn't demonstrate that it has integrity. Whereas some of the choices that we make when we're able to, from a financial standpoint, because there is some privilege that exists with those of us that use essential oils, those of us that use, whether it's Beauty Counter or Ever, or like other brands that are more eco-conscious, more sustainable, fair trade companies. Like a lot of us are also keeping an eye out on these companies that we purchase from or that we're partners with, right? To see how they're treating their employees and their teams during this time. So I'm not a fan of Amazon for a number of reasons, one of which is they don't pay taxes. I almost said a bad word, taxes, whereas all three of us pay taxes, right? And they are trying to, or attempting to, not take care of their employees during this time with hazard pay and, you know, unionizing and all of this stuff. And so there are ways that we can come together that are not necessarily writing a bill so that it turns into law. I mean, some of us can do that. You know, marching in DC or going to speak with your state or, you know, your legislators or, you know, elected officials. There are some smaller ways to get involved. So what are some ways that you all have done, like maybe smaller scale, that someone could start off with? And who inspires you? Like, who have you been following perhaps in social media that has been doing some things in ways that you feel like you can possibly adapt some of their methodology to advocate yourself?
Cool. Yeah, cool. Well, I would have to say, for like a smaller advocacy standpoint, Chidimma, earlier you posted phone numbers that people could call if they were mad about the current situation in Georgia and they wanted to voice their outrage and just horror at what's happening. And I have to say, like, when you make that phone call, it doesn't feel like a lot when it's just you picking up the phone and saying your sentence or two and then hanging up the phone. And it's kind of intimidating. I know a lot of people get scared by doing that, especially if they've never done it before. But I always start keeping notes. The second time I get a phone call on the same issue, I start writing that down and I start keeping track of how many different phone calls I get. So when I start getting 5, 10, 15, 20 phone calls about the same topic issue, that has now become the top of my jacket to talk to my boss about, hey, what are we doing about this? And how are we going to let these people know that this is what we're doing about this? So alone, that one phone call might not feel very effective, but I promise you, when you're making them and you're getting everyone that you know to make that same exact phone call, that is becoming like the issue number one on any elected official or anyone's to-do list, because there's power in numbers, and we can't have power in numbers if everyone decides that they want to sit this one out.
Totally.
Nicely said. I so agree with that. And I think in addition to that, Beauty Counter does that really nicely. They make it really easy for people to call their legislator about the issue. There's like a number you text and it's really easy. But even just if you don't have those resources handy right away, like one thing that I'm not going to say that it's easy, but that you can do, that it might be a nice first step if you're thinking about becoming a more active advocate, is to find something that you already do, like your livelihood or something you're already passionate about, and then partner with a local charity or a cause that speaks to you, that resonates with you, that may have some overlapping interest with what you're doing already, and create a fundraiser type of a situation. And just like Taylor said, where there's power in numbers, you're kind of giving people a nice way to support you and support the cause simultaneously, and everyone, it's kind of like a win-win-win situation. And since it's something that you were already going to dedicate energy to anyway, it's a really beautiful, nice way to increase awareness and also raise resources so that the people who are expert in doing what they do can take those resources and put them into the best possible.
Totally.
I love that because, you know, I don't mean this, well, sometimes I mean like stay in your lane. And what I mean, I love what you said, Stefanie, about that because, so what Tay started with was we can all, I mean, pick up the phone and make a phone call. Most of us, right, are in a position to do that. Or sign a petition. I don't know how much petition, like, honestly, I don't know. I don't have the data to know how much petitions are helpful, yet I think they are in some way helpful. And then even what you were saying, Stefanie, about fundraising. So one thing Seiko does is make fundraising really, really easy. And I remember this was before we started doing fundraisers in the way that we do them now. I do a lot of work, my laptop was slipping. I do a lot of work with Safe House Center, which is a nonprofit that provides free resources and support to survivors of all genders of intimate partner violence and sexual assault. And what we've seen lately is a rise in intimate partner violence because folks are sheltered in place, oftentimes with their abusers, right?
Totally.
And which is just heartbreaking to me. And I have put my work with them on hold because even though we're essential, we are not. What I used to do was go to see survivors both in the jails and at the hospitals. And we're not doing that right now because of what's going on. And I personally did not feel, as someone who's immunocompromised, that it was wise for me to be going out and picking up a bag where I don't know how other folks are when they have the bag. I don't know if they're adhering or if they're marching at the Capitol. I have no clue. And so I don't want to put myself in danger. And so part of this is knowing our own, you know, I don't want to say limits, but like being mindful and using wisdom and discernment in terms of like how we want to engage as well. And so prior to this and prior to Seiko's fundraising, I did a fundraiser where I used to teach indoor cycling. And so I did a fundraiser ride for Safe House Center. And I was already going to be teaching the class, right? Folks were already registered for it. And so it was really cool to be able to write a check for this organization. And so there are so many different ways, like we said, we're kind of wrapping it up because we had some tech difficulties, like I said earlier, and I want to honor everyone's time. And this is just such rich information. And so you may have to make sure you have a pen and pencil ready or your notes out. Something I'm like, do folks use pen and paper anymore? Of course they do. To take notes on like some of these really tangible things that you can, Stefanie's like, I do. Tangible things that you can.
I do.
Right. I do too. So I don't know why I said that, but you know, here we are. So how do y'all self-care? Because this is like challenging work. And like, Tay, what did you do first when you found out that the bill that you wrote was actually a real live law? It is H period 4647. So you can look it up. Anyone who's listening.
I fell to the ground and I just laid there for about 10 minutes. Yeah, I think it's really, really important as an advocate and just as a human being to, as much as it's important to know the things that you're passionate about, the things that get you excited, the things that you're ready to advocate for, how you can wind down and the things that you can tap into that are relaxing and soothing to you. So I'm an ambivert, but I have a social battery when it comes to interacting with people, and I can tell when that battery's on low and I need to reconnect by like having some alone time, and unplugging from my phone, unplugging from everything, whether that be reading a book or going for a run, or I'm a big fan of bubble baths, and I will do that if I feel like I need to take a break. But you can't pour from an empty cup. So you really need to be sure to be taking care of yourself while you're advocating for others, because if you have burnt out and you don't have anything left to give, you aren't going to be successful in your advocacy or anything that you're trying to do in your day-to-day.
Yeah, that is so true. There's a lot of like self-care is sort of almost become like, well, it's a hot trending topic right now. So often portrayed as like mani-pedi, and that stuff is great. Like, yes, awesome, do that. But like, I really view self-care as more of a discipline than a self-indulgence. I think it's so necessary, and it has to be, I want to say it has to be, but for optimal health and to recharge, like Taylor said, it needs to be something that you prioritize every day. So whether that's, feeding yourself healthy food or getting enough sleep or exercising, meditating, drinking water, whatever it is, like work that into your schedule, into your lifestyle, so that it becomes a habit and a discipline, like brushing your teeth every day, because it's so important. And you're not a robot, you're a human being. Turn off the TV, stop watching the news if it's really upsetting you. Stay informed, of course, but like we tend to almost get emotionally addicted to it. And the best thing you can do in that case is just turn it the F off and like, be quiet, have quiet time for yourself. But yeah, the idea of approaching that as a discipline instead of a self-indulgence, I think will set you up for long-term success and to really make that part of your everyday life.
Totally.
I love that way of framing it. That's so important. Yeah, because you're right too. Like self-care has been like the new thing that you post about on Instagram, and it's more than that. It's your true self-care doesn't happen in your selfie on on Instagram, for sure.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and the thing is, everyone is free to do, I mean, we have to talk about there are structural, institutional, and systemic barriers and issues, right? So that is part of the conversation. And also, my hope is that everyone who's listening and any one period can find maybe one or two things that is not cost prohibitive. For example, like perhaps if you're already paying for your cell phone, then like picking up the phone and FaceTiming or doing Duo or a Zoom call. I mean, I know we're all tired of Zoom right now. Like, I get it. And yet, house party maybe. The other, like Friday night, I did a joint FaceTime with two of my girlfriends that I've known for over 20 years. We went to undergrad together, and it was just so much fun to just like let our hairs down and not have to have makeup or feel compelled to have makeup. My hair was done or not. Bras may not have been on, you know what I mean? I mean, shirts were on, but like just the freedom of being with your girlfriends, maybe it's your family, like maybe it's other loved ones that are chosen family to you. Whatever it is, I mean, I know that most of us are not going out the way that we used to. Like Sundays used to be, everyone knows, like I do donuts on Sundays. And like the last time I did donuts was March 15th. It was a Sunday with my dear friend who's like a brother, colleague of mine, Justin. And I actually felt bad about it afterwards, only because like I didn't realize how, and this is a perfect place to say this. We are passionate. We live a life of passion and purpose. It is elevated and ethical, or ethical and elevated. Like we are in it to win it. Yes. And we don't do this perfectly. Right. And so I didn't realize I had just been in Vegas for the week for the first week of March. And I actually Stefanie and I got to go to lunch together, and I didn't really realize, I mean, folks were asking me, are you going to wear a mask on the flight? And I'm like, no, I did not realize, I was not as aware of what was going on around me as I would have hoped, right? And prior to that, I was speaking with my students and we were just talking about like, oh, well, some people are saying that we're going to be online and blah, 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 right? And that was just conjecture at the time. And now this is real life, right? So all that to say, we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. It's all good. As long as we apologize and make things right and don't make the same mistakes, and really like think about what we're doing. So one day soon, Sunday will be filled with donuts again. And until then, I might do curbside. They haven't been picking up, but either way, you just figure out what works for you, and staying connected with other folks that are doing similar work is also important, because this work will beat you down. Like you will feel not great about some days, right? And hopefully you can maybe take a little break away and then come back to it with rest and reflection and all of that good stuff. So we are, I think, at our mark. And I just want to thank you all for hanging out with me, because this was supposed to be done literally 31 minutes ago, but we didn't get started right away. And I so appreciate how you've hung in with me.
Well, thank you for inviting us. This has been really fun.
It's been an honor. I would love to just for each of us to maybe share how to connect after this. And then I would still really love to do the moment of silence.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So Stefanie, how can folks, if they are interested in plant-centered, I love that phrase, plant-centered living and learning, how can folks, or Beauty Counter, how can people get in contact with you? Or Seiko?
Awesome. Yeah. The very best, most direct way would be a DM on Instagram. I'm at Green Sage Life on Instagram, and also that's the app that you can type into Facebook to find my Green Sage page too.
Awesome.
But my website is greensagelife.com. It's all uniform. And there I have a recipe newsletter where I just share recipes for free twice a month. I'm not going to, inundate your inbox with anything. But that'll also be where you can find out about my quarantine cooking ebook that's coming out soon. So I'm really excited to share all of that. And I would love to connect with anybody that's listening to this, because I always want to have more like-minded friends. So thank you for that opportunity, and thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So everyone, that's Green Sage Life. So you can find her on Instagram, on Facebook, or greensagelife.com. And she will help guide you. She also does, she didn't mention this, it's not happening right now, I think she just finished one. She also does like 6-week online courses. So those are really cool for building community and learning more about plant-centered living. Taylor, how can folks connect with you?
That's a good question. So on Instagram, I'm at Seiko Tay Trench. I'd love for you to connect with me there. You can send me a direct message or just follow my page. Then my VIP group that Chidimma was mentioning earlier is Brave and Bold World Changers. And I am pretty proud of the way that space has been cultivated over a few years, and I would love to have you join me there if you're interested in fashion and advocacy and community and how all of those things are connected.
It is such an awesome space. I learned from Taylor. I don't know where I was and why I didn't learn it before, but I learned it from her. Maybe I just hear her voice. So for every $100,000 worth of sales that Seiko gets, we are able to hire 2 women full-time in Uganda and Ethiopia and provide for or give one Seiko scholar a scholarship for their first year of university, which is huge. And Taylor has already done that, 100,000 in sales, right, for your team?
Yes, yeah. We're closing in on 2.
That is so awesome. So my goal for the entire year is 100,000.
Yeah.
And she's already almost doubled that. And it's just May 6th.
Last year we were short of 200,000 by like 3,000 at the last day of the month, and I was like, that's not happening again. I'm not gonna be there the last day of the month, like hitting refresh. So
yeah, right.
We leveled up.
Yes, y'all did. So that community is so fun. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of education. She did a March Madness thing, y'all, where you could design custom sandals, and like someone earned them, like got free custom sandals. Like it's just a lot of fun and a lot of advocacy at the same time. So, and then for me, I'm consciousandaligned.com. Conscious and Aligned Change Makers is my Facebook page. And I am copying everything that Tay does. Just kidding, I'm not. But there's a lot of community building there. And she laughed. A lot of community building there. And then I'm Chidimma, and you can find me on my public Facebook page as well. So with that, we are going to take a moment of silence for Ahmaud Arbery, who is the 25-year-old young man who was murdered in cold blood in the middle of the day while he was jogging by two white supremacists, a father and son combination. And no one has done anything about this. And so that's why we are calling on you to do your part, which is you can call. There's a phone number. I'm going to find it. 770. That's all I got. But there is also a petition. So I'll get the phone number for you right now. It is 770-800-0689. And then there is a change.org petition, and you can do a search. And his name is A-H, M as in Michael, A-U, D as in David. Last name A as in Apple, R as in Robert, B as in boy, E, R as in Robert, Y. And you will find that petition. So we're just going to take a moment to honor him and think about his family. Thank you all. So when we think about it, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so we don't have to do everything. That said, we really ought to do something. So, and it can be a few somethings, and it can build up momentum. And when we do things together, we have that collective ambition that we are seeking to cultivate and create. So thank you all for spending time with me above and beyond what we initially imagined. And thank you all for listening on this recording. Definitely connect with any of us, all of us. And maybe in several months, we'll revisit this again and see kind of what we've been up to in terms of honing our voice and working our advocacy muscles. And hopefully we will be able to do it live with y'all so that you all can kind of share some of your ideas and things that you're working on as well, because the more we know about these different things, the better. So stay well, wash your damn hands, and may we take care of ourselves and one another. Take care, y'all.